Hello, YouTubers, and welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. I have 8 articles in this episode for you this morning, and all the URLs are listed in the description of the video for your convenience. This one is off of barenakedislam.com, and it says, Muslim Capital Day. Don't bother visiting the Capitol building today if you're not Muslim. You will have to step over prostrated bodies of Muslims who commandeer the lobby to use a prayer room where they spread out their prayer rugs and lift their asses to Allah. Islamic Tribunal confirmed in Texas attorney's claims it's voluntary. There is a quote here by Mustafa Carroll, who is the director of CAIR Texas, USA, that says, if we are practicing Muslims, we are above the law of the land. There are several links that you can go to read more about this. This article yes, it does. Yeah, it was yesterday, January the 31st is the date on the article. And there is video in this if you want to pull up the video to learn more about the Texas Muslim Capital Day. I can't make this stuff up. This next one is off of the conservativetribune.com, and it says Trump supporters beaten by anti-Trump protesters at Portland Airport. And there is video in this if you want to pull it up to see it. The article reads, the peaceful, tolerant left has unmasked itself since the election of Donald Trump as president. When it comes to peace and tolerance, that only applies. Otherwise, they're going to be as violent as they need to be to intimidate those who disagree with them. Nowhere was this more apparent than at Portland International Airport in Oregon this weekend, where protesters were demonstrating against Trump's executive order on immigration from 7 countries with terrorist ties. Others were peaceful, others were not. It says, take this video of a pro-Trump counter-protester being punched out by a liberal. And you can, at your leisure, it says in the video, Trump supporter can clearly be seen protesters who stormed the airport. He's then clocked and knocked unconscious. Didn't even get there. Instead of realizing just how out of hand the protest had gotten, the Trump protesters seemed to revel in seriously injuring a Trump supporter. That's right. One protester can be seen yelling over the unconscious victim, "You got knocked out." And then there's more video if you want to pull it up to see it. And we'll scroll on down here. KATU-TV reported that there were no arrests during the protests in spite of what happened to this man. Even though the airport remained open, some passengers were decidedly unimpressed with the mob. Using the signs they had up had all sorts of derogatory and insulting things that any family member should never be exposed to, said Jill, who was traveling with her son. She said she was harassed because of her Brigham Young University sweatshirt. I felt very unsafe. I think it's terrible that they got into a fight. Riot gear had to be pulled out over here that my son and I had to hide, she said. It's not okay. Have that. This one's off of BizPac Review, and it says, Congresswoman slapped with her own voting history after calling Trump's travel ban horrifying. Democratic Representative Elizabeth Etsy from Connecticut launched a tweet storm Monday afternoon against President Donald Trump's travel ban, but quickly backtracked after followers confronted her on her own visa-related voting history. Etsy co-sponsored HB 158 on December the 3rd of 2015, a bipartisan bill that enabled the executive branch, led by the Department of Homeland Security, to severely limit or curtail visas from countries like Iran and Iraq. Trump's list of 7 countries came primarily from the text of House Bill 158, but the executive order allows Trump to place a travel ban from any resident of those countries, excluding those with current green cards or legal residents of the United States. That our nation used and abandoned families fleeing terror on Holocaust Remembrance Day will forever stain our history. The countless stories of innocent families torn apart by this executive order are horrifying. This isn't who we are. This can't be what we've become. This issue transcends politics. Congress must act quickly, and I will work with any of my colleagues who will join me in doing so. As Chris Murphy of Connecticut said, this EO will embolden ISIS and endanger us. It's a national security threat, and Congress must treat it that way. Etsy's followers on Twitter were quick to remind the Congresswoman about her voting history, going on as far as to call her a liar. One says, "Really, Representative Etsy, because you co-sponsored it for Obama, but it's evil for the POTUS, real Donald Trump, you're a liar." Etsy responded quickly, citing a Vox story that didn't even mention the bill in question. She says, "Literally nothing you said is true." And then she puts this link in that Trump's now complaining that his order is being called, I don't know, it trails off, and it says Trump originally proposed a Muslim ban. Now he's upset people are describing his executive order as one. And the article continues, and it says, Este's press office told the Daily Caller News Foundation the Congresswoman didn't mean to assert that she didn't co-sponsor the bill, but rather the bill didn't do the same thing as Trump's executive order. The office added that Trump's order is unique because it constitutes a blanket ban, while the bill that she co-sponsored only sought to reduce the number of visas issued from the same 7 countries. Este's co-sponsored visa waiver program Improvement and Terrorist Travel Prevention Act of 2015 prevented members of the 38 countries to enter the United States for less than 90 days. The law prevented anyone from obtaining a visa into the country if they had visited any of the countries on the list within the last 5 years. The American Civil Liberties Union opposed the measure before it was signed into law. Other followers on Twitter weren't having any of her response. One user posted a screenshot of the bill along with a picture of her name on the co-sponsor page. Town Hall reported that President Barack Obama actually restricted travel based on country of origin several times, the first of which occurred because Obama continued to rule under former President George W. Bush that heavily restricted travel from 36 nations, primarily in the Middle East. Obama also signed an executive order that severely limited intake of refugees from Iraq, stalling any further influx for 6 months. But nobody seems to want to talk about that now, do they? The next one we have here is off of USDefenseWatch.com, and it's an open letter to Senator Chuck Schumer. Dear Senator Schumer, it was quite a weekend for you when you weren't wallowing in your 15 minutes of self-induced fame with endless tirades against President Trump and his executive order. You flooded the airwaves with enough crocodile tears to fill the Hudson. If that wasn't enough, you posed with the Islamic Walton family yesterday to show us how the world to sing in peaceful harmony, especially with people who want nothing more than to see us graveyard dead. You referred to President Trump's executive order, which indefinitely barred Syrian refugees from entering the United States, suspended all refugee admissions for 120 days, and blocked citizens of 7 Muslim-majority countries, refugees or otherwise, from entering the United States for 90 days, Iran, Iraq, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, and the Yemen, as mean-spirited and moral outrage. Yet they bear a resemblance to an executive order issued by President Obama in 2011 and orders issued by the Department of Homeland Security last year. 11, President Obama placed a 6-month ban on all refugees from Iraq after a refugee was linked to the deaths of U.S. soldiers in Iraq. According to a DHS press release dated February the 18th of 2016, the Secretary of Homeland Security has determined that Libya, Somalia, and Yemen be included as countries of concern, specifically for individuals who have traveled to these countries since March 1st of 2011. DHS continues to consult with the Department of State and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence to develop further criteria to determine whether other countries would be added to this list. Last month, the United States began implementing changes under the Act. The 3 additional countries designated to join, Iran, Iraq, Sudan, and Syria, are as countries subject to restrictions for the visa waiver program travel for certain individuals. Sure sounds like the same countries listed on President Trump's executive order, doesn't it, Senator? Strangely, you nor your colleagues in dishonesty and deception from the liberal media ever uttered so much as a peep about those orders signed by Mr. Obama and authorized by the DHS. As you well know, Senator Schumer, the president's first constitutional duty is to protect the nation from all enemies, foreign and domestic. It's not his duty to bow to the neurotic, loony whims of women on The View, naive airhead actors, and award ceremonies or anarchists your party has unleashed once again in big cities across the country. The examples of terrorists who have infiltrated into the United States under the guise of the refugees visa program are numerous. Here are just a few examples out of many. On November the 18th of 2013, in the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of California, Isaiah Doe was sentenced to 10 years in prison for conspiracy to provide material support to terrorists, conspiracy to provide material support for foreign terrorist organizations, conspiracy to launder monetary instruments, and providing material support for foreign terrorist organizations. Doe was admitted to the United States as a refugee from Somalia. On January the 31st of 2014, the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of California, Ahmed Nisar Tal Mohammed, was sentenced to 6 years in prison for conspiracy to provide material support to a foreign terrorist organization. Mohammed was admitted to the United States as a refugee from Somalia. On April the 20th of 2015, in the U.S. District Court for the District of Minnesota, Abraham Yassin Dodd, a Somalian refugee, was charged along with 6 others with conspiracy and attempt to provide material support to ISIS. On February the 18th of 2015, Al-Hazma Mohammed Jawad was arrested as he accepted to board a flight to Jordan to join and fight with ISIS in Iraq. Jawad was admitted to the United States in 2013 as an Iraqi refugee, and he subsequently obtained a green card. On January the 29th in 2013, in U.S. District Court for the Western District of Kentucky, Mohammed Sharif Hamidi was sentenced to life in prison for a number of offenses related to terrorism. Hamidi is a native of Iraq who was admitted to the United States as a refugee in 2009. In 2009, Ramadan Alwan, an Al-Qaeda Iraqi terrorist living as a refugee in Bowling Green, Kentucky, later admitted in court that they'd attacked the U.S. soldiers in Iraq. An ABC News investigation of the flawed U.S. refugee screening system, which was overhauled 2 years ago, showed that the men were mistakenly allowed into the U.S. and resettled in the leafy southern town of Bowling Green, Kentucky. Sudan was designated as a state sponsor of terrorism in 1993 due to concerns about support to international terrorist groups. Elements of Al-Qaeda-inspired terrorist groups remain in Sudan. Groups continue to operate in Sudan, and there are frequent reports of Sudanese nationals participating in terrorist organizations. Iran has been a financier and supporter of international terrorism since the Islamic Revolution in 1979, financing such groups as Hezbollah. Iran was implicated in 2011 plot to assassinate the Saudi Arabian ambassador to the U.S., Adel al-Jubeir. Iran consistently taunts and threatens the U.S. military in the Persian Gulf. Libya is a failed state that has become a training ground and recruitment center for ISIS, and especially for ISIS members infiltrating into Western Europe under the cover of the EU refugee programs. The war-torn country of Syria is not only a haven for ISIS, but a training ground for future terrorists and ISIS operatives in North America and Western Europe. In a recent interview with the UK Express, an ISIS operative boasted that the group has infiltrated 4,000 people into Western Europe under the guise of posing as refugees. In fact, one of the gunmen during the Paris attacks in 2015 had a Syrian passport on him when he was killed during a terrorist operation. In July of 2016, Mohammed Dalil, age 27, blew himself up outside a wine bar in Ansbach, Germany. 15 people were injured. Dalil was a refugee from Syria who had arrived in Germany in 2014 seeking asylum. You don't know who these people are or where they're going or what their motivations are, do you, Senator Schumer? How's the government supposed to scrutinize the backgrounds of refugees when the law prohibits officials from examining the social media pages of those who wish to settle in the USA? You do know one thing, though, Senator Schumer. They will eventually vote Democrat, and that's all that counts. National security be damned. Liberals claim that the U.S. refugee program is as solid as steel. It's more than obvious that the U.S. refugee program is another inept federal government operation, a house of cards ready to collapse on the nation. Mean-spirited and moral outrage, Senator? Mean-spirited is a jihadi firing a couple hundred rounds at innocent men and women in a crowded Paris theater. Moral outrage is Al-Qaeda operative roaming freely around the U.S. with a shiny new green card and a carload of C4. Mean-spirited is a jihadi driving over people with a semi-truck in downtown Nice. Moral outrage is a Somali refugee stabbing a dozen people at Ohio State University. Mean-spirited are the constant threats by Iran against the United States. Moral outrage is a series of ISIS suicide bombs detonated in the Brussels airport, killing 32 innocent civilians. No one has a constitutional right to be here that is not an American citizen. Those who come here do so at the discretion of the president and the Congress, which represents we, the people. You might want to explain that to your shrieking, naive, delusional fellow Democrat, Senator Schumer. The President of the United States is a leader of this nation. Like all leaders, he must make decisions that are sometimes unpopular among certain groups. For the greater good of America, strength is a trait that has all but vanished among liberals and national security, as anemia has the left's obscene worldview. It is more than obvious that Democrats are willing to gamble with the lives of the American people in order to be politically correct. Your actions this weekend, Senator Schumer, have clearly demonstrated once again that the simplest equation in the world is liberalism equals absolute weakness. And it's signed Ray Starman, Editor-in-Chief of U.S. Defense Watch. The next article that I have for you is off of BizPac Review. White House issues ultimatum to State Department dissenters over Trump's immigration policy. Get out. If President Donald Trump's decision Monday to fire acting U.S. Attorney General Sally Yates did not speak volumes, White House spokesman Sean Spicer came right out and told others in the government, either get with the program or they can go. Career diplomats at the State Department have signed a dissent memo formally objecting to Trump's executive order on immigration and refugees designed to keep America safe, the Chicago Tribune reported. And there is a tweet by Rich Samuels that says, impact, more than 100 diplomats have signed dissent memo in State Department over Trump's refugee policy. The article continues. It says, Spicer responded by saying, if these career bureaucrats have a problem with it, they should seek employment elsewhere. I know the president appreciates the people who serve this nation and the public servants, Spicer said at Monday's press briefing, but at some point, if they have a big problem with the policies that he's instituting to keep the country safe, then that's up to them to question whether or not they want to stay. Those signing the memo collectively say Trump's action stands in opposition to the core American and constitutional values that we, as federal employees, took an oath to uphold. They have decided the policy will not achieve its stated aim to protect the American people from terrorist attacks by foreign nationals admitted to the United States. Acting State Department spokesman Mark Toner said Monday the agency is aware of a memo on the executive order circulating on a dissent channel. The dissent channel is a long-standing official vehicle for State Department employees to convey alternative views and perspectives on policy issues, Toner said. This is an important process that the acting secretary and the department as a whole value and respect, he said. It also it allows state employees to express divergent policy views candidly and privately to senior leadership. And the privacy part goes out the window. article is off BizPack Review, and it says, another promise kept. Trump takes a buzzsaw to regulations, and he's very specific. President Donald Trump made good on another campaign promise by signing an executive order cutting U.S. regulations. The order, signed by Trump on Monday, zeroes in on federal regulations by government agencies and requires cutting out 2 regulations for every new one being introduced, the Daily Mail reported. The American dream is back. We're going to create an environment for small business like we haven't had in many, many decades, the president told a group of small business owners at the White House before signing the 1 in, 2 out plan, which he called a big one. The order requires agencies to control budget costs for new rules, with exceptions for emergencies and matters of national security. We want to make life easier for small businesses, Trump said. There can't be any discrimination. The president added that he would like to continue by eliminating up to 75% of existing regulations that burden American businesses. This isn't a knock on President Obama. This is a knock on many presidents preceding me. It is a knock on everybody, he said. Regulation has been horrible for big business, but it's been even worse for small business. The president is delivering on his promise to slash bureaucratic red tape that is choking our nation's small businesses, White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer said on Monday, according to the Daily Mail. Under President's leadership, the federal government will no longer punish Americans for working and doing business in the United States, Spicer said. Who met with Trump before he signed the order were grateful, noting how that have been buried in a tidal wave of red tape, as land developer Dennis Bradford said. Regulation has been horrible for big business, but it's been even worse for small business, Trump said. I've dealt with the small businesses and big businesses, and I love you all the same. Off of BizPack Review, it says local investigation gives Texas judge the all clear after wearing a pussy hat during court proceedings. The Texas judge, intent on proving that political activism has long since evaded the bench, replacing the blind eye of justice, opted to wear what is being called a pussy hat. Travis County Judge Sarah Eckhart donned the pink vagina hat made popular by the January 21st anti-Trump feminist march in Washington while in Commissioner's Court, KVUE-TV reported. According to a Reddit post, Eckhart was wearing the hat in honor of our abortion is healthcare resolution. If it makes any difference, the ABC affiliate explained how Eckhart's role differs from typical judge and is in the clear of any wrongdoing. In the Travis County, the county judge position is an elected role. The election oversees the commissioner's court and is in many ways a commissioner themselves. Similar to a city council and mayor relationship, the county judge acts as the head of the commissioners and county government. KBUE's Jason Puckett reached out to multiple county departments to verify that this behavior was acceptable and found that almost every source he spoke with agreed. Eckhart is in the clear. Regardless, one social media user was quick to note, could you expect to have a fair trial, especially as a man, if you saw this? And there's a whole list of tweets underneath this. I'll grab a couple at random. One here says, any lawyer worth his salt is going to file appeals for every single case this judge has presided over. Another says, so, jury duty, and was given strict dress rules, but it's okay for a female judge to wear a pussy hat? Missed something. And there's some video on the bottom of this if you want to pull it up to take a look at it. This episode is off of InfoWars, and it says, Pelosi asked, is somebody going to deal with this? As Mike fails at an anti-Trump rally. When all else fails, sing. That's what Democrat lawmaker and anti-Trump protesters did last night on Capitol Hill as they waited in the cold for a microphone to be fixed. And there's an update to this story. It starts out with, it says, President Donald Trump tweeted early Tuesday morning, Nancy Pelosi and fake tears Chuck Schumer held a rally at the steps of the Supreme Court, and the mic did not work, a mess, just like the Democratic Party. But this is how the article reads. It says, when all else fails, sing. That's what Democrat lawmakers and anti-Trump protesters did last night on Capitol Hill as they waited in the cold for a microphone to be fixed. Is the sound working? Sound working? South Minority Leader, or try that again. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi asked as she stepped up to speak. I can hear you. Can you hear us? She asked the crowd. Pelosi, believing the microphone was on, began her spiel saying how proud she was to be standing with fellow Democrats in opposition to President Trump's executive order on immigration. And it says moments later, Pelosi stopped her speech. It's not on, she asked. Is somebody going to deal with this? There was a long pause. Look at that moon, Pelosi said. It's a new moon, all right. Can you hear me now? She asked, in an unintentional parody of a TV ad for cell phone service. Good evening, everyone. Pelosi began again. I'm very proud to stand with the members of the House Democratic Caucus, soon to be joined by the Senate Democrats as well, sharing views in a bipartisan way with many of our Republican colleagues who agree that what the president did undermines our values and is not in support of the oath of office. We take that support, and the page jumped on me, hang on. And we take that support and defend the Constitution of the United States. Can't hear? She interrupted herself again. Can you hear me now? Does this work better? No, staff people, Pelosi said. Shall we sing? This land is your land again until they get the sound working, Pelosi suggested. And so the crowd burst into song. This land belongs to you and me. The microphone never got fixed, but Democrats continued speaking anyway. Finally, Senator Cory Booker, Democrat of New Jersey, pulled out a bullhorn, but he didn't use it to address the crowd, apparently because it would have deafened Pelosi and other lawmakers standing nearby. He just shouted instead. So, sounds like that was a comedy of errors. My goodness. That's all I have for you in this episode, but I do have one more for you, so stay tuned. If you like what I'm doing, give it a thumbs up, share it on social media so everybody gets to hear the news. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done that yet.